So I want to talk today about LinkedIn profile optimization. However, I want to talk about the aspect of LinkedIn profile optimization that I think a lot of people tend to miss. And it's especially prevalent when you're working with companies of less than 20 people, as well as sales teams of less than 2 or 3 people, because at some level, and this is the part that I think that one of the key areas to hit home with LinkedIn profile optimization, that a lot of people talk about LinkedIn profile optimization without context of it being a profile that's optimized most typically within an actual company, and it's a company product that you're selling as opposed to an individual selling their own services where their LinkedIn profile is the product to some degree, or that is the wrapping paper of the product. The product that exists underneath that is directly engaging with that person. But naturally, that changes when you're looking at a company at large. So a key area when it comes to LinkedIn profile optimization is company-wide profile optimization. Okay, and there's two elements to that really. If you think about it, there's the LinkedIn company pages, and there's LinkedIn individual profile pages. So first of all, the key distinction that we need to make when we're working with small to medium businesses, when you're a small to medium business, is looking at your LinkedIn profiles in the main. Because if you're, especially if you're engaging with people on LinkedIn, anyone who's going to make a buying decision, or at least a significant proportion of them, are going to do something of a LinkedIn stalk. They're going to check out a couple of the people in your team. They're going to have a look around your LinkedIn profiles. So you want uniformity, you want consistency, you want a general minimum standard when it comes to the profiles that are part of your actual company on LinkedIn. And I think that a lot of people don't look at it. That's where you get random profiles that are still added to the company. You get maybe a student or someone who changed jobs. You get profiles with no pictures. You get basically such an array of ultimately profiles at a different level that it creates this scene of inconsistency, of lack of care. So a lot of people focus individually on a profile without context of the wider view. And that's one of the things that I think that very often or most often gets missed in a lot of the training that I see, that we're not optimizing for the individual because people aren't going to make decisions based upon singularly that individual at some part of their journey. And it's just safe and practical and pragmatic to think about the wider company context. And there's two buckets to this now. Okay, you've got the LinkedIn company page, and then you've got the LinkedIn company individuals profiles. So you've got page and you've got profile. So when you think about those two buckets, there's a truism that won't change irrespective of platform level or algorithmic changes that you might see happening over time. And the thing to do is to make full use of all of the features on LinkedIn. Most people, for example, it's a simple distinction, but you can have LinkedIn posts, you can have LinkedIn, of course, pages, and then they have showcase pages within LinkedIn. Now, some of these things may change over time. The terminology may change, but the principle remains intact, that there's a whole degree of integrations and or features that LinkedIn company pages as well as LinkedIn individual profiles have that people don't choose to activate or utilize. And what's crazy is the difference between doing it begins with even recognizing that they're there. So when you go and optimize a LinkedIn profile individually, are you looking at every single element that LinkedIn allows you to optimize? That's bucket number one. And then are you optimizing it? And this is what's really interesting about it is the gap from having nothing to having something can be 2 minutes of just filling something in. 2 minutes. But that something, the compound effect of having a small series of some things, can lead to fundamentally such a return on investment. So when you have your company page, when you have your actual individual page, make sure that you're making full use of all features of the platform. And that's something that many of us or most of us don't do. So Gary, you're working on the client side. So it pays dividends to ensure that there's a uniform standard across all of the clients. Okay. And one big thing that can leave a consistent impression across the board is, are we having, for example, I talk about this in the LinkedIn individual profile training, but are we having a call to action in the cover image? Is there a clear call to action? We'll book you 30 calls in 30 days. Our oil extraction filter will save you 60% of costs. Contact me to find out more. A simple call to action, and ensuring that all of the sales reps, ideally all of the people on the LinkedIn platform, are using a consistent call to action, because otherwise it's a dead profile. It's passive. And given that, and this is the thing that people don't necessarily appreciate, that all profiles are real estate to advertise, because people can look on it. It's like, oh, you're an accounts executive, you're a client liaison director, you're a sales director, you're this, you're that. Everyone can use the same call to action. So what does a company do? Or what is in it for me if I engage with you? So ensuring that there's that consistency in the title can pay huge dividends. So one of the things that we need to think about, and this again relates to the treatment of LinkedIn. Like, what is the purpose of us create? And people don't think about this enough. Why have a LinkedIn profile? And a lot of people think, oh, it's good for professional networking. Yeah, but I already have a job. I don't need to professionally network. Amazing. Why don't you sell the benefits of whatever work it is that you're doing, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you're self-employed, whether you're part of a sales team, whatever it might be. So therefore, that's why optimizing each of the profiles is really important, especially the profiles. If you go and look at a company and you look at its people, it'll typically be the most senior people to a degree that tend to appear at the top, with the smaller companies, at least. So making sure that all those profiles are optimized is really, really important. Making sure that the company page is active and content is being posted is really, really important. And optimizing for these things doesn't take much energy or effort. It's just a case of connecting it to some degree. You can if you wish to, because again, to move from zero to perfection, it's more practical to start with moving from zero to something, because something is much, much better than nothing. And most people start and end with a nothing. And that's why, for example, another key thing for our work and for anyone who's watching, have consistent content going out across all of the LinkedIn platforms, or all of the LinkedIn profiles that are part of your company. It doesn't take much. There's automation that does that. There's content that you can write ultimately with ChatGPT that can do that. Now, again, there will be questions about content, about quality of content, but the important thing is that you're on that yellow brick road, that you're beginning that journey of starting to optimize content, because being active will then is a form of creating noise, and you cannot get recognized if you don't create some degree of noise. So the optimization begins with individual optimization of profile. Then you look at company page that ultimately people will then look to when they're approached by an individual on a platform. So if you think about the way that LinkedIn works, when you're doing outreach, you message somebody. And the natural journey, when you're being messaged by someone that you don't know offering a product, you look at that person, and then you might quickly jump and bounce to the company. And then you might look at some of the employees. That's the typical journey within LinkedIn. All of those areas need to be optimized. And if you're not optimizing them, you're leaving ultimately money or perception to whims, perception on the table. So the company page being up to date and optimized, us keeping up to date with all of the features that are allowed on the LinkedIn platform is also really important. And then ensuring, can we, for example, schedule content, or can you as a sales director, as a founder, whoever's listening, can you ensure that multiple people have content that's going out on their actual LinkedIn accounts? And there's different ways to do it. And there's different questions, of course, that people will have about what kind of content, should I post content? Now, these are questions that when it's outside of your hands, it's outside of your hands. But ideally, these are things that if you're in charge, you should do. If you're advising, you should heavily advocate. And the reason is because every conversation on LinkedIn, the largest B2B networking platform on the planet, should be a sales conversation. So if we go back a step now and think about it again, number one, you optimize your individual profile. Okay. And the way to optimize it to begin with is to make sure that you're utilizing every single aspect of a LinkedIn profile. Are you utilizing all of the features that LinkedIn makes available to you at both a profile level as well as a company level? And then are you raising the minimum standard of all of the people that might be looked at upon a company account? So just making sure those balances and checks are in place. Once you've done that, on the profile that you're ultimately using for outreach, are you drip feeding content? connecting it to an automation or a scheduler, having AI write relevant industry-led content for the next 12 weeks, 3 posts a week. That's 36 posts. Again, it can be spun up by ChatGPT 4 or 5, whenever, whenever anyone's listening, it can be spun up in 30 minutes and you can tweak it. And there's some work that once you do the work once, you get infinite returns upon that work, which is why it's useful and beneficial to do that work because of the ongoing return on investment. And that work is the fully optimized profile. That work is making sure that we're using all elements of the LinkedIn profile. That work is figuring out a standardized process to at least produce some level of quality of content to push out on that actual LinkedIn profile. That and do you see how that as you stack each of these layers onto a LinkedIn profile, a series of LinkedIn profiles at a company, standardized cover image, you quickly whip one up, for example, in Canva and say, great guys, this is the call to action. Please, 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 can you encourage all of your employees to add this? You put together, for example, now ChatGPT 4 posts that you edit and say, actually, guys, I've created 100 LinkedIn posts. Feel free, but I really encourage your team to start posting some of these 3 a week. Or you say, we can connect all of your LinkedIn accounts to a scheduler, and then we can schedule it out via Buffer or a Buffer equivalent. And then there's these levels to it. So when we think about LinkedIn competency, the basics, and these are basic in principle, but not basic in action because not enough people do them. And you'll see that there's a lot of dead activity or dead accounts, and we kind of optimize a profile, but then we don't go the full hog. So looking at those 3 components, the individual profile, a LinkedIn company page, and then the profiles of several people within the company, you optimize those profiles. Again, we talk about the infinite return on investment. And then you also say, you know what, I'll spend 3 hours playing around with ChatGPT to get enough content that will constitute 60 different posts about fundamentally the same subject, because that's what we're selling, or will add value. And again, the idea is that as you approach each layer intentionally, you're beginning to get better at that layer, but making sure that that's happening, because and people forget this with LinkedIn outreach. They don't combine inbound with outbound, and they think LinkedIn is an outreach mechanism, but of course it's also inbound. But the way you attract inbound is that you become a person of influence, and the way that you do that is by producing content that's worthy of influencing others. And something is better than nothing, because the pushback will always be, but what about the perfection? What about the specific, precise need? But we need to advocate that this is better than what you're doing, and what you're doing is currently is nothing. There's nothing that's happening. So if you look at those 3 buckets, you'll already be in a place. This is before the content, because the content is the 4th bucket. Okay, bucket number 1 is individual profile. Bucket number 1, individual profile. Bucket number 2, company profile. Bucket number 3, company individuals profiles, multiple of them. And bucket number 4 that layers over all of them is consistent production of content. You'll be in a much, much better place where you're more likely to be able to generate inbound as well as outbound leads to support the messaging that you're doing. So if you factor all of these in, you're more likely than not to get a better result from LinkedIn as a platform. Do you have any questions?
On the case of with content, is it, say you produce these 36 pieces,
Sure.
is it then okay to then post them across multiple profiles? So we have 36 pieces. Piece 1 is,
you can spin them up and write different versions of the same content, of course, can't you? So
yeah, and then just okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Because then you amplify the message, right? So if we take one of our clients and you think we've got a LinkedIn profile that, and sales teams, if you're watching, think about it. If you've got 4 sales guys that are using LinkedIn, have all of them drip feed content into their ecosystem. Think about it. They are connecting. If you're using LinkedIn as an outreach platform, right? And this is for Aaron and for Shania, and for, you can spin up content for them, Gary. You could say, you know what, I've got a content bot, and I've optimized the bot using my GPT for viral status updates on LinkedIn. And all I need to do is feed it either an onboarding form or some subject matter knowledge, and it will spin out content that'll be ready based upon the sales literature that I give it. So you can build that, right, Gary? And my GPT immediately say, you know what, I've already got it, and it's following latest 2024 advice. I went and what I would do, and guys, again, the way you could do this with my GPT, you could Google or YouTube latest LinkedIn training advice from 4 different videos that's been released in the last 3 months, how to write viral status updates, how to, write content that counts on LinkedIn, pull the transcripts from each of them, pull it into the MyGPT. So MyGPT has fed all of that data as well as its own research it can pull. And then you can say, produce content based upon this. And this is the prompt I'm going to give you, tweak it. And then boom, you're done. And you'd be like, for every post you give me, write 3 variations of the same post. All I'm going to give you is an uploaded onboarding form or whatever it might be. And then we can begin to use that for our content. Does that make sense, Gary?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Do you have any other questions?
No,
Okay,
not
amazing.
really. I think it's all very straightforward. You got the buckets, you follow it through, and there's not really much to say until I guess I actually do it.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, perfect.